In this lesson, we are going to be reviewing Lesson 3 Standard Mastery Check. So the first article is titled The Ring of Fire, and it discussed the tectonic plates and the Earth's layers. So let's go ahead and let's go over the answers for the questions. So the first question says, which best states the theory of plate tectonics? So we're going to be looking back into the text to where it talks about plate tectonics. So if you look back into the text where it talks about the continents moving pieces, you'll see that this is where it's discussing plate tectonics. So it says, in the 1960s, geologists began to study how the continents moved. Their explanation is called plate tectonics. This theory holds that the Earth's crust is not one solid sheet of rock. Instead, it consists of about 10 large plates and several smaller ones. These float slowly across the mantle's hot, molten rock. So this right here, this textual evidence, is discussing the theory of plate tectonics. So I need to find a statement here that is matching this textual evidence. So the first one says, Earth's surface is made of different sections of rock that move apart and collide. Well, this is exactly what it was saying, that it consists of about plates, 10 large plates and several smaller ones that float slowly across the mantle's hot molten rock. So if they're floating across the rock, they're obviously going to collide and come apart. So this best so far states the theory of plate tectonics. Now let's look at the rest of our options to see if we have a better one. So the next one says Earth's most active volcanoes and earthquakes occur in the Ring of Fire. This has absolutely nothing to do with plate tectonics or the theory of it. Earth's layers consist of the crust, mantle, and outer core and inner core. While this is discussing the layers of Earth, really the plate tectonics are happening primarily in the crust. And so this really does not have anything to do with the theory of plate tectonics. And the last choice says Earth's continents were once joined together as one landmass. While Pangaea was originally one landmass and was separated due to plate tectonics, this does not really state the theory of it. So this is why the first choice, Earth's surface is made of different sections of rock that move apart and collide, would best state the theory of plate tectonics. Moving on to number 2. Number 2 is a two-part question. So part A is going to affect your part B. If you answer part A wrong, that means you're most likely going to answer part B wrong. So you have to really pay attention and do really careful search back into the text to make sure that you're answering part A right. Now, test tip, sometimes your part A and your part B, since they're so related, you can sometimes get guidance for your part A answer based off of the part B evidence. So if I scroll down here and I look at the part B evidence, if I notice the two subheadings that they're giving me is what causes volcanic eruptions and the science behind earthquakes. So I know that my answer choice for part A has to do with volcanoes and earthquakes. So I'm going to come with that knowledge, I'm going to come back up here to part A and I'm going to look at the question. It says, based on the text, select two statements that explain why shifting plates can lead to dangerous effects. Well, the dangerous effects that can be, come from shifting plates is going to be volcanoes and earthquakes. So I know that my answer choices here are going to have to do with volcanoes and earthquakes, since those are the dangerous effects that came from shifting plates. So the first one says they allow parts of the Earth's crust to break under intense force. Well, I know that when the Earth's crust is breaking under intense force, that's what causes an earthquake. So that's probably going to be my best answer choice for right now. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it. The second one says they allow magma to burst from between cracks in the plates. This sounds just like a volcano. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. So now let's go ahead and let's read the other answer choices. They cause blocks of rock to separate and form new plates. This is not really a description of a volcano or an earthquake, so I don't really want to select that one. The fourth one says they cause lava to seal the gaps between the plates. This does not discuss volcanic eruption or earthquakes. I wouldn't select that. This one says they allow heat from the Earth's core to escape and damage the crust. This is kind of more like a geyser. This isn't really a volcanic eruption or an earthquake. And the last one says they cause other smaller plates to shift and move also. Smaller plate shifting does not really cause earthquakes, so this would not really be the best answer choice. So now, in part B, we're going to be choosing textual evidence that's going to be supporting these two statements. So we're looking for textual evidence that says they allow parts of the Earth's crust to break under intense force, and they allow magma to burst between the cracks of the plates. So part B it says, click one sentence from each paragraph that best explains how shifting plates can lead to dangerous effects. So let's look at this paragraph, what causes volcanic eruptions. So if I look in this paragraph, I'm trying to support the fact that they allow magma to burst between cracks in the plates. And so I can see right here, it says, when magma and expanding hot gases rise towards Earth's surface, they are forced up through these cracks, resulting in volcanic explosions or eruptions. This evidence best supports my statement from the part A. Now moving on to the next one, it says the science behind earthquakes. We're going to be looking for a statement, textual evidence that is supporting the statement that they allow parts of the Earth's crust to break under intense force. Now if I look at the last sentence, it says if the pressure of the rock is greater than the strength of the rock breaks or shifts, resulting in the release of tremendous waves of energy in all directions. So this would be the best evidence that supports that statement. Moving on to question number 3. This had to do with the article precious metals. So we're going to go ahead and just jump straight into the questions. So the first question says, what can you conclude about the most precious metal? So when the question is asking you to conclude something, that means that you're taking all of the evidence from the article in its entirety, and you're going to make an inference, or you're going to make a conclusion about all of that evidence. So that means that out of the statement choices they're giving us, all of the evidence in the article needs to support that one statement that they're giving us. So the first one says the most precious metal is as valuable to us now as it was in the past. Now in the article, it discusses how really in ancient times gold and silver was valued more, and now how in current times there's different types of metals that are valued more, such as rhodium and platinum. So that would not be the best answer choice. Choice 2 says the most precious metal can help us detect other precious metals. Well, the only metal in the article that discusses that it can detect other precious metals is californium. And by saying that the most precious metal can help us detect other precious metals, that means that californium is the most precious metal, which in this case, that's not really the case, because it really depends on what time in history you're discussing to know what type of precious metal is the most precious metal. So that would not be the best choice. The third one says the idea of what is the most precious metal has changed over time. Now, yes, all the evidence in this in this article does suggest this. In ancient times, they valued silver and gold. In current times, we value californium and rhodium and platinum. So the idea of what is the most precious metal, it has changed over time. So this so far, all the evidence does support this. And then finally, the appearance of metal determines whether it is the most precious. Now, it does discuss that precious metals tend to have a high shine or luster, but really, the appearance of it does not determine whether or not it is the most precious metal. What determines whether a metal is precious or not is really, is really dependent on the time of history that you're discussing that metal. And then part B says read paragraph 8 below, and then click on the sentence that best supports the correct answer to part A. So I'm going to be looking for textual evidence that supports the idea that the most precious metal has changed over time. So this says, so what is the most precious metal of all? That depends on your moment in history. So this sentence right here, that depends on your moment in history, supports the idea that what the most precious metal is has changed over time, because obviously it depends on when in history you are. That's going to determine whether or not you see either gold or silver as being more valuable, or californium and platinum as being more valuable. Okay, moving on to number 4. Number 4 was a drag and drop. So they gave you statements on the left, and you're supposed to pair it up with evidence on the right. So let's look at the first statement. It says, the laws of supply and demand apply to everything we buy, including precious metals. So I need to look for textual evidence that supports this statement, that the laws of supply and demand apply to everything we buy, including precious metals. So if I go down here, I see a statement that says the value of metal can also depend on how valuable people perceive the metal to be. This is the best choice for this option, because if people perceive or they see that and believe that a metal is precious, then obviously they're going to want to have more of it, which means that the supply and demand is going to be higher. And so obviously the laws of supply and demand are in play here. So this is why this evidence best supports the statement. The second statement says people throughout history have set a high value on precious metals such as gold and silver. So I'm going to look for textual evidence. Here it says, indeed, people have often used these precious metals as money. So this is related to that, and it does make sense. So this evidence supports this statement. And then finally, platinum does however, have many uses. Right here it says it is used for electrical contacts and dental materials and to hold bones in place on the heel. So this is evidence is best for this statement. Okay, so this has been the review for Lesson 3, Standard Mastery Check. Hopefully now you better understand how to make inferences and how to use textual evidence when citing and supporting statements.